Hey everyone, we're going to be starting our live stream in a few minutes, and we're going to be having as our guest this evening William Brower. And as I said earlier, he is going to be talking about his author work, and he is also going to be maybe giving us a little bit of a tidbit of some of the stuff that he does with the Titanic as a historian. Welcome to the Indie Files with Jackie Chin. And we're going to be bringing on our guest now. So I'm going to let him into the room. He's been hanging out in the green room. Yes. We need to have your camera working, and we need to have sound on you. Dun, dun, dun. Calling Mr. William Brower. There you are.
Yep, here I am.
Hey, how are you?
Great. About yourself?
I'm doing all right. All right. I'd like you to adjust your screen so that we can get more than just the...
Yeah.
That's better. Hey, that's pretty cool in the background there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you give us a little bit more of a scenery on that, or are you kind of like in a fixed position? I don't want you to have to like...
Well,
look at that. That's pretty cool. We're gonna just go back over to where you were. We're gonna get that eventually as a capture and be able to put it up onto the page when I go to load your show up for the Indie files. Blah, 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 blah. Right. So all right, so we're going to get started with Mr. William Brower. So please, for those who don't know who you are or anything about what you do, give us a little insight.
Well, not a problem. My name is William Brower, and I'm an author and historian here in the South Florida area. I've written 37 books and have had two of my screenplays optioned and produced. And other than that, just pretty much so your typical writer, live on the coffee and I have social media, but socialize only when I'm in between writing projects. And you know, I'm a Pisces.
Oh no, no, no! Before we start going down that rabbit hole, let's move to your works. You are an author, so what kinds of genre do you write in?
Well, I basically write a little bit of everything, but with my background being as a historian, I'm a sucker for both history and mythology. So, regardless of what genre I'm currently writing on, you're going to guaranteed to find elements or aspects of either one or both within the context of it as well, too.
Absolutely. The book that we are going to be having the most focus on this evening
Hmm.
is
That would be my beloved fantasy series, The Ultimate Labor of Love. What I also like to call the physical example of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and that would be the Chronicles of the Dragons Bane.
okay. So this is a 9-book epic poem,
Yes.
and it has the flavor of mythology written all the way through it. You got started on this book quite young. So give us a little bit of a background about how this even started.
Well, I'm really glad that you asked that one. Believe it or not, this actually started my ninth grade earth science class when I was 16 years old. And it's one of those cases where I was sitting in the classroom. The teacher was going to do a lecture about plate tectonics, which I had studied over the previous summer to generate ideas for a different story. So I was bored with the lecture in about 5 minutes. And diagonal from me was a gentleman named Rodrigo Negrera, who was actually sketching skulls on his notebook. So I kind of tilted my desk without causing too much of a scene and asked him if he knew how to draw a minotaur. And he kind of looked at me for a second, and then about 5 minutes later, he taps my hand and delivers a minotaur. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. Um, looking at the teacher across the room again. Hey, do you know how to draw a broadsword? How about a dragon? How about a medieval castle? Okay, that's good enough. Thank you.
That's so you got your early sketches for some of the ideas that were traveling around in your head as your adventure started with Dragons Bane.
Yes. Yeah.
When you first started writing, what was that like? Did you have a evolvement of this picture going into how you wanted to work as a dialogue, or did you get it in bits and spurts as you were going along?
Well, it was a little bit of both. Um, for the most part, I wanted to do something that would be a far cry from what was available in the fantasy market to begin. So
Right.
immediately, instead of having everybody expecting this to be similar to Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian, you know, I wanted to go the exact opposite. That's why right off the bat, I started with the snippet part on just developing the characters first. And so, my main character, who happens to be the chosen one that's been foretold in a prophecy written by dragons, Instead of your standard warrior stereotype, this is a man who comes from a background of being a magistrate, and so
Okay.
he relies more on negotiations and things along those lines. Not very well experienced on the battlefield. He knows how to hold a weapon. He knows how to defend himself if he has to, but he's never controlled an army.
He's not interested in doing a quest.
No, not really. Not what's going on.
How much of your personal life? Ooh, yeah. So there's like so many questions. How much of your personal life was taken up in this 9-book series? Yes, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. This is an epic poem. How much of your personal life was drawn around there, or actually influenced any of the work that you had put into the book?
At least 90%. Now it's my turn to take the cat out of the bag. On that part, because predominantly for the most part, prior to my attending high school, I was automatically raised with an appreciation of history itself, and that came from my father, who over the years as I was growing up, first originally taught me how history begins with your family, and
Yes.
then it's a ripple effect. And so, within that time frame, I was able to learn about how I'm actually a direct descendant of William the Conqueror of the Norman invasion. So, I say that my genetics is what helps make me into the person that I am. So obviously the Viking in me is very determined, very driven, very stubborn.
Do you think that's the voice that you're using to write with?
I feel that it is, yes.
How did that happen again? That is so weird.
That's certainly different.
Um, it happened the other day too, and don't I don't know.
There we go.
We have a ghost in the machine, and so we're just going to carry on.
Yeah,
Continue, please.
not a problem. You know, so even as I began working on the story, knowing just some of those aspects alone, it helped me because understandably, most of my friends like to joke and call me like Gomez Adams, because if you were to see my house, I have in the living room, I have 3 gun cabinets full of swords, axes, battle axes, throwing knives, half a suit of armor, a helmet from the Lord of the Rings, among all kind of just sitting there on display. And just like with anything else that that I have within the collection, growing up, I was always taught that even though this is technically mine specifically, we're actually stewards of these relics to pass on to the next generation.
Yes.
And so I was taught from an early age, how to handle the blade, how
We
to hold it.
respect the blade
Yep.
first, then learn how to use the blade, but also the history of the blade is extremely important.
Yes, exactly. So that helped as I started to develop the story further. Now, even character wise, I do have influences from family members. And
Okay.
my very first 2 immediate characters that I had created before I even started on the protagonist, I intentionally wanted to fill in as much of the supporting cast first, just so I could build the party and then kind of play around with the dynamics of it all. So my first 2 immediate characters, and these are both my personal favorites, are characters named Caravax and Latarian. Now, Caravax, physically, he looks like Horus from Egyptian mythology.
Oh,
And his weapon of choice is actually a crossbow that has been passed in his family for every king of his land. and it's a magical one that never runs out of ammunition, because with him being of a hawk descent, he's able to do aerial combat. Now, Caravax is actually based off of my great uncle Johnny, whom growing up used to tell me snippets, not direct full stories, but snippets about his time in the European campaign of World War II. And so, he told me about crossing the beaches on D-Day, and it was like being a tank commander and going into German territory. Then he would just kind of not talk about it after that. And so after he passed, he actually left all of his war relics to me so that I would understand why he never said anything. And so it was, during the course of reading through them all and, the different accolades and things along those lines, because he had won the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and recognized for bravery. But one of the things that had occurred was he was actually involved in a battle called the Battle at Remagen Bridge. And his tank took a direct hit by artillery, and the shock wave threw him out of his position. So he ended up getting injured in the process, ruptured both of his eardrums, damaged his back and shrapnel, but he ended up being the only survivor of his crew. And so that's why he never spoke of it. So I often thought about that in terms of how his reaction was in that matter. So that's why I created Caravax after him. Because with my grandfather, it was the complete polar opposite. And so whenever I would spend time with him, he always talked about what it was like being in the Pacific campaign of World War II. And originally, what had happened was, obviously because of the height of the Depression and things along those lines, he decided that he was going to go into the service, and he enlisted with two of his best friends. And as the story goes, my grandfather ended up getting sick before getting his orders. So his two buddies ended up getting deployed and were stationed on board the Arizona. And then once he heard the attack on Pearl Harbor and heard the call from FDR on December 8th, it changed him. And he went on a vendetta against the Japanese army. And during the Battle of Guadalcanal, ended up fighting at Iron Bottom Sound, where in the midst of the battle, he was an AA gunner at the time, and he was chasing after this one bomber that was coming after him. And he ended up swinging his gun with so much force that it actually broke the supporting bolt. So instead of only turning up to 180 degrees, he was able to do a full 360-degree pivot with the gun. And he accidentally shot off about 15 feet of his own ship's smokestack. So his ship's captain gave him the nickname of Trigger Happy Harry, which stuck with him during the course of the entire war.
But did he do what he needed to do?
He sure did.
So, sometimes I think that there is an actual pantheon, that there is this, or Parthenon or Pantheon? Pantheon. So I think I often feel that I'm a chess piece on this chessboard where these gods there decide they're bored and they're going to move my piece around. Sometimes I get extra strength. Sometimes I get extra knowledge. Sometimes there is something that just happens and it's not supposed to happen, but it does, like what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be. It is an act of the gods.
Indeed. And what better way of paying homage to hearing about all of those stories? And there were so many stories about his time over there that, you know, it made for the perfect character. And
Yes.
so, so that's why between the two of them, they were the first two that I formed, because their stories were so integral into what I was falling into and what I was becoming as I was discovering my craft.
This is also forming who you are as an individual.
Indeed, yes.
So when you go to start filtering out more of the actual, would you call it a quest or an adventure?
I would say it's a little bit of both.
Because they're two different things.
They are, yes. You know, um, I wanted to add as much of a sense of adventure as possible, but at the end of the day, both are interchangeable and intertwined within the story. You know,
So once you get to this section where you know that you have the the main ideas, how do you go into developing the arc? How do you go about doing that? Giving us something that we feel invested in as this is happening before us while we read it.
well, basically, what I do is I intentionally lose the writing. I'll playlist of music that I work off of, and I do this for any of my projects. I actually match songs to genre, so that it'll keep me in the same mind frame while I'm working and developing on something. And a lot of times, if it really starts to build up onto a scene, um, it's almost like it writes itself. And I can tell you, I've been known to having a tendency of sometimes sitting in front of the computer and just typing away, what I like to call binge writing. Some people have the binge drinking issues. I have a binge writing issue. So I can easily vanish for about 4 days straight and walk back out and tell you that I have half of a novel written, and I miss on the news. What's going on in the world? Who's doing what? Do we?
It's got I've gone to conventions, 3-day conventions, and not gone outside the building, and
So you
only around where the people are that we are absolutely interacting with, and not speaking to really anybody outside of that, even in the building. If they're part of the convention, that's and yeah, of course you go and you crash out someplace and you come back and you start it all over again in the morning. But uh, when you come out of that and you go into the real world, it's kind of it's kind of a different kind of experience. What's it like for you once you come out of that binge writing?
well, when I do, I believe it or not, I actually keep a notebook handy, and I just kind of go down my little checklist, because I often say this for people that want to break into writing. This is something that you have to anticipate, because you are going to get that moment where the flow is going to overtake you.
Mhm.
So 9 times out of 10, what I'll do is on the notebook is I'll put a list down of any movie trailers that I had seen in the months prior to me working. That way, then I know what movies look pretty good, because more than the premiere, but I'll be able to get it when it comes out on DVD, probably about a week.
Mhm. Oh my. Seems as though the stream got stuck. So we're having all kinds of anomalies this evening.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you kind of froze there, like a,
Yeah. I'm
I
like,
thought
So,
Yeah.
but I'm still listening. So there are things that you need to do as a creative to make sure that you, number one, stay in the flow of the writing path. But outside of that, we do have a contemporary life where we have things that we have to do to make sure that we are, taking care of things that we need to take care of. Uh, I don't know why this is doing this.
Yeah, maybe there we go. Okay. Um, so you something about being a creative, and
Right. So, well, as we are creatives, we sometimes get stuck in that flow. And once we come out of it, we have to make sure that our contemporary life is being taken care of too. So that's all important as well.
indeed,
Right, right. So you listen to music. You do you stay in the genre that you are when you're actually not writing, or do you allow yourself to kind of like break away from that before you go back into it again?
I normally like to break away from it, before jumping back in. So I'll decompress, by jumping on the PlayStation for a bit and just kind of play a couple of video games, and then call it a night 9 times out of 10. And then, first thing the next morning, bright eyed, bushy tailed, can finish the coffee. Let's do this.
So take me, so now that you've taken me up to the arc, take me into a little bit more of your process as you are going from midpoint into a few more sections. What is it, what is it like for you? Like, take us through a scenery that you've built, or give us a little bit of an idea of the style of dialogue that you have put into it.
Well, scenery wise, I know that this is gonna be one of those cases. I could say that, in full defense, I'm a writer, so it's nature. But the way that I actually work it is, I also see the scene from a filmmaker's perspective, and so I have a tendency to sometimes storyboard it,
Okay.
and it gets fun too. Because, like, for example, you know, just like Spaceballs and Darth Helmet, yes, I'll sometimes play with dolls. I will build. I'll if I see a figure or a playset that looks similar to what I'm trying to work off of, and
Mm-hmm.
someone kind of visually beaten me to that point, I'll pick it up and then I'll kind of adapt it and tweak it a little bit to how think it would look in my mind, and then I'll build up the scene from there, and then I'll sit down and I'll start writing it. And then, dialogue wise, I keep it, instead of being another part of the ultimate of the contradictions here, instead of being the typical epic fantasy, epic poetry version, it's modern dialogue. Ah, there's Barrios.
All
There we
right.
go.
I wanted to give them enough of an idea of the kind of work that this piece is, and so we're going to do some of the photos, and then we also have a number of people that are watching live. So if you have any questions for William, go ahead and type them out, and I will make sure to pass them over. And, also to let us know if you're enjoying what you are listening to. So I'm going to get out of the way over here and have a little bit of a discussion about how much of that drawing is different from the very first one that you were able to get um, from the gentleman that created it.
Well, believe it or not, that is the original drawing. The only difference is, this has been digitally restored in later years, so it's for preservation purposes. I still have the original sitting in the notepad and in the notebook that is currently sitting in the case with all of our notes and collections that span the 4 years of high school. So but there's the character that launched the series right there. And ironically enough, I've made him the last living minotaur in my world. And there's Caravax at a younger age in his own kingdom's army
And
before becoming. Go
there,
ahead.
yeah, there is also reasoning behind the colors that he has.
Yes, because of the fact that he actually lives, technically his kingdom is inspired by Machu Picchu. So this is more of a standard Inca garb more than anything else. And again, it's just me combining my love of myth and seeing what it comes up with and how it stands out for my own version of the test of time. There's the original drawing.
And that's see, I should have probably put that one first, but you see how it is taken from this kind of concept drawing into the version that you got that was the one that you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
That's cool. And this is the kind of stuff that AI doesn't do.
No, it does.
No.
I actually tried it. I tested it, and results were horrible.
So what happened? Because we didn't really talk too much about the AI with you. I didn't even think about asking you about that, but AI is a big thing lately, and it just doesn't get to the feel or feel authentic enough. It's just kind of flat.
Well, best example I could give you, I tested it the sketch of my antagonist in the first story, who is a mage named Jameson. And during the course of the story, Jameson makes a deal with what you later find out is the god of evil. But what he basically does is he's offered the opportunity to have absolute power, but in exchange for his own blood. So each spell that he acquires, the less of his humanity is completely lost along the way. So, by the time he has the confrontation, he's pretty much so walking dead. And when I ran it through the AI, instead of having some of the rotted marks along the cheekbones and the exposed bone and things like that, it turned my mage into somebody with a whole bunch of tattoos. And I'm like, no.
That's just not what we want to go right now. We do have a question from the audience from Russell Carroll. On the spectrum of writers between pantser and plotter, which are you closer to, and what do you see as the pros and cons of each?
Well, hey, I lean more towards plotter, and it's definitely a lot easier to develop the plot and then build the characters within there as well too. The former is okay. I mean, it's one of those cases. I often say it's the things along those lines is like a debate between regular and light beer. Is it great taste or is it less filling? And
Great.
yeah,
Did I give you opportunity to talk about this cover?
not yet, but this was actually a revised cover. This was put up initially as part of my short story throughout the high school years. And so, after I started writing this more, my English teacher actually submitted it into my school magazine. And of course, I had to, give proper credit due. So I explained that, the story could not have been done without the contributions of Rodrigo and his drawings. And so
Absolutely.
his drawings came into play as well too. And so this was the introductory version of it. And then this is after I digitally restored it. This is basically me just kind of picturing it like a so there's my tagline, something to catch the eye appeal, and then a little spot for the cast on the production on the bottom.
I'm really gonna move out of the way. See, there we go. Woo! All right, we have a lot of other photos to go through, and Russell says thank you.
Anytime. And glad you're able to catch the show.
Yes, absolutely. So let's see. I don't want to push and I
Wow.
did.
Okay, so that one.
Yeah, that was me. I did that. Just so many buttons on here, and I'm going to be going to a new platform pretty soon. And boy, it's going to be interesting. Just give you a.
So this is Letarian, who is, as I said, this is who is inspired after my grandfather. Now, you can't really tell well in the picture, but in his hand is actually a bladed battle axe that he carries, that he has and owns, and he made himself, and he named it Retribution.
I just think the drawing is cool. I like the drawing.
I'm a little biased. I like all of them.
I know, right? I'm allowed to have my favorites.
Of course.
And all right, so there are other photos in here that we will go ahead and put up on our page for Indie Files, but I want to get to the really cool ones.
The newer ones.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Would you like the head, or would you like the object, or would you like the full scale of everything? What would you like me to show?
I will let you do the options.
Okay, then I'm going to do this. Look at this. Let me get out of the way. Look at that.
There's the helmet of Dragons Bane.
That is amazing. Let's talk a little bit about how this was produced and the idea behind the concept.
Well, with let me walk exactly what Dragons Bane is. Okay, and this is a combination and inspiration on two levels. So to start with, it comes from mythology, because that Perseus had the helmet of invisibility and the shield to help battle Medusa.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also other heroic weapons from other myths as well too. So when I was building Dragons Bane originally, I was intentionally playing around with the concept of creating an almost like a unified world in itself, a physical representation of it coming together. Now, bringing it together in order to make the weapon and the sword, I would love to say I thought of it, and it's definitely 100% my idea, but that's actually not. That actually comes from the TV show Voltron, of which I'm a huge fan of, even now. And I have, you can't see it because it's too big, but I have a of it sitting across from my desk. So was a sucker for the giant robots coming together to make something else. And so
all right, you ready for this? I don't think anybody is going to be ready for this one, but I'm there. And this does not do it justice, But let me tell you, when I go ahead and I put it up on the our main page, you'll be able to like really get in there and look at all of it. So let's talk about this.
Here is the Dragons Bane. Now, in my story, this is all crafted by the dragons themselves, specifically for my main character, whose name is Philip. And I envisioned it to be not only grand and illustrious, but the blade itself was going to be made out of crystal, and then the back end of it, the hilt and everything else, was all going to be shaped to elements of a dragon. Kind of representation of its own origins. So, understandably, between this one, the helmet, and also the whole package deal that you also had talked about that you liked, just like with life itself, believe it or not, up until last summer, Rodrigo and I had lived separate lives. And artistically, he still remains very private and everything else. And we had not seen or really spoken to one another in almost 15 years prior to last year. And so when after we reconnected, we kind of caught up on everything and things along those lines. He sent me an email and he was like, "Listen, I'm kind of doing things on a different level and from a different approach, but I think you're gonna like this." And so he sent me this one, the helmet, and then the full grand reveal, the bigger picture. And I'll be the first one to admit, I'm the type of person that I am 99% a people person, super outgoing. There's one thing I will rarely do, and that is I will rarely cry. But I was bawling like Niagara Falls when I saw that image right there. That is Philip in the Dragon's Bane holding his weapon. And that shows how far it's come. It really does, because I think I sent you the early concept of it. Correct?
Yes, I think so. There
Should
were
be in the file. So
yeah, there was like 14 separate images that I received.
okay, if you see one with a guy wearing a green suit of armor, and there's a picture of him with just his head without the helmet.
Let me see if I can actually pull that up since we're talking about it, because I know a couple of them didn't didn't form the way I needed them to. Is this the one you're speaking of?
Bingo. Yep.
Okay, so let me do a little dive out of here so we can get the whole thing in there. Go ahead.
This is Philip, the original concept of Dragon's Bane, and the way we both originally kind of visualized it. And once again, playing around with the colors and everything else, you see the sword, dark blue crystal. The helmet is light because it was actually forged by the dragon himself, and it's made of an unknown material. The breastplate and the gray spots actually represent scales, allow breathe underwater. And then the blue is also supposed to match part of the water factor. And then his legs are a dark green because he represents the land dweller kingdom, which is inside of the middle of a rainforest. So this is the embodiment of all the kingdoms coming together in the form originally.
I enjoyed when we were first talking about this, and I'm gonna see if I can move it this way. I know enough about world building to know that the colors and the textures are often symbolic of different places that have contributed to either the armor or whatever weapons and all that they had. And that was one of the first things I had said to you. It was like, wow, the colors are
Mhm.
very uniquely done. I like it a lot. Now, you and I had a bit of a conversation about these two pieces, and I'm just, for my own interest, have you an idea that you might at some point want to get these pieces actually done in replica form?
Would love to. Believe it or not, looked into um, models of the characters that I could display at book signings events as well too. And just like any old work in progress, thrill,
Right.
you know,
There
and
are,
putting pennies together.
yeah, it's just I need to show this one again because it is just absolutely phenomenal what people can do with graphic arts. And because there's been a lot of attention on AI, it can't do that. It can't do that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what medium he was working off of, and he is so selective and private that he wouldn't even tell me. I mean, he did the age-old question of, "Do you know how to keep a secret?" So can I.
Get that? I understand. But do I understand?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, come on, we're in the industry. No, you're in the industry. I'm just an artist. I'm just doing this for the hell of it.
Now I'm gonna throw something up here, and it's going to be kind of hard to see. So it's not your eyes in the audience, but th-
There we go.
there's two drawings here that I really want them to at least try to get a glimpse of.
This is the original drawing of Philip from 1991, and you know, again, I was within the story. If you read it as the in the intro in the very first story, the weight of the world is already thrown upon his shoulder to begin with, and so when we had him drawn, this is just the variation that we had of him, and so you can see the gaunt features, you can see the sleepless nights.
He looks like he's been through hella no.
Oh yeah, yeah. He believe it or not, I'm going to give a quick spoiler alert here, and there's his antagonist Jameson. What I did is I intentionally played along with the hero's journey, and I gave both of them the same exact scenario. In Philly's, his home village is attacked by raiders. He gets framed for murder and is punished. And Jameson, who you see here, his family accidentally crosses over the borders into another kingdom, which the way that I created my world is seen as an aggression. And so the family is massacred. He ends up barely escaping with his life, but he's cast onto a deserted island where he sees and stumbles upon a statue of what becomes the likeness of the god of evil. And so in the sketch that you see here, you can see that half of his face is already starting to lose its luster. He's already starting to fall under the spell and the power that's going to later consume him as the story progresses.
Very cool. All right, I'm gonna flip one more time back over to this, and I'm just gonna leave this in the background for, I guess, the rest, because this is this is the silver tuna. This is the amazing. Wow. And so what is it like for you to know that you have created this piece and that you do have a following that is listening to a web series that you have started? And what is it like for them when they come to you and say, what their feelings are about what you've created?
It's actually very humbling on so many levels. I've honestly, I've always been surprised to how many people have read it and some of their responses, because it's the ultimate conundrum. I'm trying to definitely get my voice out there, getting my books, getting my own film projects out there,
Right.
to the best of my ability. But you know, at the end of the day, it's one of the most rewarding phrases is "I read your book," and you know, it's
And
that's
I
needed.
liked it.
Yes, exactly.
And I liked it is what you should be adding to. And I liked it.
Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes people get their works written, or they get their works written and then somebody comes and they consume it, and sometimes not so favorable, or they have a whole bunch of things like, you got this wrong, and you got there's no way that that would happen in this world. Speaking of world,
Yes.
world building, that whole huge topic of world building, there are a lot of things that go into doing the world building. For you, name like 3 or 4 elements of world building that you have put into this work.
Okay. You were first introduced into this world. The name of the world is Mysidia. It actually has been living, just really surviving following a 10,000-year civil war. And so picture the group of China enveloping the entire planet. And each kingdom is separated by its own specific boundary. And like I said before, reaching across a threshold, let's say if you're playing ball with your kid and you throw the ball too hard and on the other side of the fence, if you reach over that fence and you reach to grab the ball, that's considered aggression. So that means that the army is allowed to invade and go after you for doing that particular source of action. So even with all of this division, all of this uncertainty, everything else, the only thing that actually unites the whole world is the fact that there's going to be this chosen one who's going to come in the world's darkest hour. He's going to have the armor and the sword, and he's going to unite everybody against the ultimate. And so, amidst all this division, still, leader thinks that it's going to be their own kingdom. So they always keep the hype going. It's going
Mhm.
to be one of us. We're the better. We're more intelligent than they. Like that.
That could go so contemporary so quickly, but I think I'm going to keep it on the light side. And
Good idea.
we're just gonna hang in this. This is nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then
Now, I was going to say, flowing through into the world building aspect, I will say this.
yes.
I have a very, very fun anecdote about the whole series. And this is where I laugh and had to chuckle. And that's why I kind of paused when you're asking about, having the following and things to that effect.
Mhm.
Now, during the course of the 4 years of high school, my first 4 stories in or that all encompass 4 years of script right there. Believe it or not, when this started getting published in the school's literary magazine, that's where I started to develop fanfare and things of that effect. But on a monthly basis, I also would end up having to be called into a meeting with the school psychiatrist
Hmm.
because there's a lot of dark undertones. There's a
Yes.
lot of graphic battles taking place, and it turned into its own running joke because the first time that we went, I had to go in there. and he's sitting there and he's looking at the pictures and he's looking at at some of the
Mm.
script and such. And he's like, okay, so, is there anything going on that you need to tell me about? Or, um, and I'm like, well, no, not really. And he's like, okay, well, you have this one particular scene and they're talking about a human sacrifice and you're actually writing it through in full descriptive form, exactly how the sacrifice is being done. Do you want to do that to someone? I'm like, no, what the hell's wrong with you?
This is a work of fiction. It
Precise.
is. It is an exact work of fiction, but it's a work of fiction.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, where are you coming up with these ideas? And this is where we come to the ultimate punchline. So I was like, well, for the part about the human sacrifice, no problem. That's upstairs in the school library. It's the history section. It was the history of the Aztecs, written by so and so, fourth shelf, sixth book in. Right now it's missing because it's in my locker. Um, if you don't want us to read these, how come it's in the school library? And
Are
he
you
just,
not are you not sourcing the books that you're putting in your own library, sir? Hmm?
Mhm.
Right.
So needless to say, during the entire 4 years, it was almost like I already know what's gonna happen. I already know it's publishing day. Let me keep my bag packed. Be stopping over real soon. So obviously, by the time senior year rolled around, any formality and professionalism was coming out. So I'm like, "Hey, Bob, how we doing? So, did you and the kids manage to go to Disney World for the summer? Cool. Well, you know why we're here. It's gonna be the same line of defense for the past 3 years. I'll try to down if you need me to, but
What's
nah,
going on here? We
yeah,
have questions, ponderies. We want to know, why don't you go to your library? Why
yeah,
don't you read? Why don't you go to the librarian who could probably give you a list of all the books I've checked out and, do some research? How'd you get your degree, by the way? You know what I mean? There would be questions I would want to be asking.
yeah, exactly.
Basket weaving. It was basket. It was all basket weaving.
Wow, I took that class too. I still have the calluses from the needles.
Ow, ow, ow. So the cool part about this whole development is that first it taught you really how to research very well.
Thank you.
Then it taught you, because you were reading all of this, that taught you a larger etymology of words to be able to put into it and to be concise in the language because it is a period piece. So you need to have the right words to be able to go and put in to this epic poem.
Exactly. And you know, at the end of the day, it's still equally just as fun. It really is. And there's, out of the 9 books, you know, just to understandably, as things progress, so too did the time.
Right.
And so, you know, one of my favorite pieces that I have, and instead of having it done in high school, I actually had a group of friends be my beta readers, and I seriously had to laugh about it. Um, my third story is where I ended up taking the story and as a whole into the darkest point ever. And in the midst of all of this chaos going on, in reality, the current event at the time that kind of sparked the concept was watching the footage from the rescue of Private Jessica Lynch during Iraqi freedom.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I kind of threw a factor of that into there.
Because I was going to ask you if you had put any contemporary elements into it. I mean, obviously, you put contemporary elements because of your family.
Mhm.
But as everything was folding out, I was, curious as to whether that happened or not.
Oh, very much so, yes. In fact, going back to my first story, the final epic battle that takes place, the final confrontation between Philip and Jameson, if you pull back the curtain, you take away the magical factors, you take away the Dragon's Bane itself and things like that, you're actually looking at Pickett's charge during the Battle of Gettysburg.
Absolutely.
Turn the tables around,
Yeah.
throw the mythical factors into it, and it still works just as effectively.
That is why this work is probably going to be read eventually in schools. That is where I want this to be, because it is a way to be able to introduce all of these battles, all of these questions about lineage and all of the ways that things can go right or things can go wrong.
Precisely, and I will admit one of the things that I took it on as a personal challenge more than anything else. But after I completed writing the books, I decided I wanted to take it one step further because I've had a lot of friends over the years that have said, "Well, you should try to make a movie. You should do something with this. Make a movie, make a series, things like that."
Hmm.
And so, understandably, at that point in time, I had already received my degree, graduated with honors from Full Sail, so I knew
Hmm.
how to do screenplay and writing and stuff. Like that. And it, just one of those cases where during the midst of it all, they're like, "Well, in order to even get them to turn their heads, you need to show that you can have at least 5 years worth of content." Like,
Yes. Yes.
hey, I can top one even better. Hold my beer. I can give you 10 years worth of content.
And let's see how this rolls out. Yeah, because like if you're using if you're trying to write a book to screenplay, they when you're going to source to try and get either a film or even a television show or something like that, they're going to ask you for at least 5 seasons.
Hmm.
They're going to want to know how this evolves. And sometimes when writers go for long periods of time and they put lots of books together, sometimes their work gets worse. And it's like they're not going to look at this and go, uh, "Yeah, it's great, great concept in the middle. It's starting to lag up. What happened?" They're not going to put that in there. But with the work that you have put together, it's solid, and it has a full scale of different characters that multiple people can relate to, and it doesn't even really have well, it's got maybe a bit of an age range. I would say late teens to whatever,
Precisely.
but it covers such a broad area that I think that it would do well either as a series or on big screen. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I mean, knocking on wood here.
I
Here's
know, right?
hoping. I will say this much: returning to the series during the course of adapting it from novel to script, I was very fortunate enough because it allowed me to do something that I wasn't able to do when I wrote it at age 16, and that was to actually go more in depth into, like, say, my character Jameson. And I do want to give proper credit here in one sense. I have a friend of mine that I correspond with frequently. Her name is Karen Gallego Montfort from Spain, and like me, she's a literature buff, And so 9 times out of 10, we're either talking about somebody else's works or poetry or things along those lines.
Mhm.
She also happens to be a teacher in Madrid. And so, we started talking about Don Quixote and some of the other pieces. And
Yeah.
so, right off the bat, I was like, well, you've opened my mind on so many levels here. I want to do something for you. I want to name a character after you. I mean, this is me saying thank you. And it's nothing. I don't want anything. I'm not doing the hit on you. I'm doing this as a friend.
Because I respect what you do.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, I have other friends that are also listed in the series, and these are all people that have helped me come to the point where I am. And she's like, well, okay. I don't read fantasy, but I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, that's good.
Just make it a good part or a good death. Something.
Oh, believe me, it's an epic death.
Throw me off a cliff with flames and I'm rescuing somebody as I'm burning alive and all of that was something, whatever, it's just crazy things.
Into burning building to save all the puppies as it's
Yeah, or blow up a couple of this, that's, and the others that really, really need it, and go out like walking out epically. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Now you've embraced your inner Xena. You see?
Right. So this epic poem though is not written like others before. You write it in a way that is very contemporary form, so that it's easily readable. And talk a little bit about that part of it.
Well, one of the things that really, really put this in the heart for me was looking back and kind of reading an article that had mentioned how regular students of between 18 and 24 don't find history or mythology of interest to them anymore.
It's unfortunate, but true. Yes.
It is, because right off the bat, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If they don't like mythology, then why do they like Marvel? Because Thor is from Norse mythology. Okay, so let
They
me work.
do. They just don't know why they do.
Yeah, so I'm like, let me work the formula. Let me teach them a lesson about both of these things, but without directly teaching them.
Right.
And so I intentionally threw in throughout all 9 books. You're going to see something of either history or mythological, and it could be as subtle as it gets or blatant, and to a point where I'm not going to do a full spoiler alert, but thoughts have one character in particular who is a knight, but his lineage is the Order of the Dragon. If you know that particular phrase, you can connect the dots.
It's cool.
Thank you.
It's cool. It's definitely cool. The other thing is that you could probably just write a series just on that, just as like a backstory or some such prequel
You
kind
know,
of thing, maybe. I don't know, but I know you got a lot of projects going on. Speaking of a lot of projects, you got that really cool Titanic ship in the background. I want to give you at least enough time to be able to talk about that, but we have one more comment. Superheroes are all modern mythology. Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much, Stanley.
Absolutely. Russell Carroll. All right, so talk about the Titanic. Give us a little bit of something, because I am going to bring you on specifically just to talk about your Titanic endeavors, about your Titanic history, and as being a historian and all of that kind of cool stuff. But give me like about 5-6 minutes of what your background is for the topic of the Titanic.
Well, I'm a Titanic historian. Coming up in August, it's going to mark 43 years of research. I've, you know, actually, my area of expertise, my focus has always been strictly on the past and crew. I've written 5 books about this. Very fortunate enough, in 2012, one of my actually presented research memoirs, which was called "Touched by the Titanic," as a gift to the Queen for her Diamond Jubilee. And so, I do have the letter from her lady in waiting, letting me know that Her Majesty enjoyed the book, and it's sitting in the Royal Library. And I was completely unprepared for that. That was on all my own move in action and volition. All I knew was I was going to be getting a package in the mail, and I was already anticipating some more research material from them, but I didn't expect a letter. So
It's cool.
it
That's
is.
cool. Very cool. Very
But
cool.
but my biggest honest moment though is that in 2013 I became appointed the first U.S. ambassador to the Titanic Heritage Trust. And that was a group that strictly focuses on preserving the memory and the legacy of the passengers and crew. And that put me in touch with a few other descendants, and also through them as well too. I ended up becoming very, very close personal friends with a gentleman named Mr. Cliff. If you read my later books of Dragons Bane, you're going to see a character named Cliff May, and this is exactly who it is. So it just shows sometimes the passion and the creativity blend together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I enjoy I was going to say genetics. That's not I do enjoy genetics, but I enjoy quantum theory, and I have found that in the entanglement of quantum theory, everything is one. And when you are sourcing, you are probably pulling out that informational piece from your ancestry, literally genetic. And this is what drives people to be passionate, especially about things like the Titanic. It's a very large piece of history that, again, crosses so many genres and so many people. Their lives have been touched by it, whether they're interested in the history of the actual ship, physical ship, or the interior of it, or the bands that were playing, or any of the people that were owners, or the people that were large in name that were able to be on that ship. So it's an incredible piece of history.
Oh, it is, and it's quite the rabbit hole to dive into. So it's
Absolutely.
it's always fun to see what happens, and just like with it, just like with life itself. Believe it or not, even to this day, we're still learning new things about the ship.
All right, so we have a website that is behind you, and if you duck a little bit out of the way, I'll be able to read it. So it's webbrowser2.wixsite.com, and / writing portfolio. You are going to be able to find a lot of information about this gentleman who can now probably move back onto the screen. And when I read through your bio, because usually when I bring people on, I read through their bio and all that. I was like, I am not going to do that because it's going to take at least 20 minutes for me to do that. And God forbid if I screw up and I have to start all over again. So his bio is going to be fully listed on our site. We have a brand new page for the Indie Files with Jackie Chin on our Facebook page. I have sent out lots of, uh, requests for liking the page or sharing the page. And we are going to have all of Mr. Um, Brower's information on that site. Is there, well, first of all, this is the first time you've actually been on any of my shows. What did you think about your first live interview?
Well, I
Oh,
thought it was awesome because I mean, being a fan of Zombie Palooza, I'm glad to finally be on the hot seat. So you know, kudos.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to, or anyone that you want to show some uh, get some eyes to their site, or any events that are coming up that you want folks to know about?
Well, definitely, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people. Mark Allen Pilgrim over in Cornwall, because he's still awake and tuning in as well, and he's a longtime writer. He's actually a very well known up and coming actor, and cases where, from a writer's perspective, I would show him something and he would be like, "Well, this is great. I like how this looks. Do me a favor. When the film comes out, would you let me know when they're going to start opening up the auditions for it?" And I'd be like, "Well, I just wrote it. I don't. That's out of my. Yeah, okay, no problem." So I need to give it to him for being one of my biggest fans, as well as to Cliff Ismay, because he recently just published his first book, and over the years, I've kind of prepped him for it, and also have watched from the sideline as he's taking his own initial steps into the world of the creative industry as well too.
And it's a
And
very powerful book too. It's he writes it in a very uh, lovely story
yeah,
way. Uh, and he grabs you right into it, and he also dispels a lot of the myths that were circulating, and sets some things straight.
and it's about time. I mean, better late
Yes,
than never.
absolutely.
So definitely, I got to give a shout out to those two. Because these days, between the two of them, some of the driving forces helping with getting Dragons Bane up and ready to the next level.
Thank you. Much appreciated to everyone that is helping you be able to take from seed concept to post production. It's a very exciting journey that you're on. There was one other question that had to do with the Titanic. Let me read for you.
Sure.
Um, they say, why do you think the Titanic resonates so much to this day, as opposed to so many other disasters like the Hindenburg, for example?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And the best way to answer that is that the Titanic is the epitome of a Greek tragedy. To start with, her name is derivative of the Titans who
Mhm.
challenged the gods of Olympus and were held for doing that. And take it away factor though, it's the simple fact that when you look at the night of the sinking itself,
Mhm.
How are you going to live your last few minutes of life? What are you going to do? What
Right.
choices are you going to make? Things like that. Um,
There
you
was
know,
one story that you had said, because I had mentioned that I was interested in what the band was playing, the last song that the band was playing as everything went to full destruction.
yes, yes. Wallace Hartley. Um, one of the more interesting little bits of trivia that just makes up the bigger puzzle of it. Many years prior to Titanic, he and a friend of his were kind of playing the joke of planning your own funeral. So that came up was, if you knew that you were going to be in a situation that you were going to die, what song would you play? And he confided in his friend that it would be Nearer My God to Thee, because that was the hymn that he first learned to play on his violin. And lo and behold, at 10 minutes after 2, during the course in the midst of the final plunge of Titanic, that's the tune that the band played.
And they didn't quit. They played it all the way through.
They played it all the way through. All 8 members went down with the ship.
Quite a tribute to their life,
Hmm.
and the fact that we're, what, some 100 years later still talking about it.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely epic. Just as your epic poem, very resoundingly beautiful in its correlations for what we're doing now in this contemporary field. So I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I do so hope that if you have enjoyed it as much, that you tell others about it, and that you know anyone that is interested in being interviewed on really any subject, because this show is going to be very broad, more broad range than my other shows. Bring them along and let's hear their story. It's one story at a time. We are building this amazing page with one incredible story after another. Russell says, fantastic interview. Well done to both of you. Glad I could listen in. Keep up the great work, you two, and thank you. That I'm going to say
So much.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I am now going to be playing the another piece of Mariano Salino's composition that he had made for the Indie Files with Jackie Chin. So I'm going to go over and do that. And you're welcome to stay until it's finished. And I will talk to you probably a little bit after interview or sometime tomorrow. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.